This is 5 Live Formula One with Jack Nicholls.
It's time for qualifying ahead of the third round of the 2023 Formula One World Championship. Welcome to the action in Melbourne. What an interesting qualifying session we're into. Risk of rain for qualifying is 90%, and that's because it is a bit wet, drizzly, dreary right now. There was a Formula 2 race in between free practice and now, and that had a few cars spinning off on the way to the grid. It was so greasy and tricky, and I think we're in for a very, very fascinating session here, because we just saw at the end of free practice 3 actually Carlos Sainz ending up in the gravel because it got a little bit too rainy, got a little bit too greasy, and we saw in free practice 2 yesterday similar conditions. So what are we about to see in the next hour? Alongside me is Jack Aitken, the former Williams reserve driver, and yeah, and it was the same in free practice yesterday, Jack, wasn't it, really? That sort of middle ground of not really intermediates, but also not slicks, and also not really raining, but also not dry. A challenge.
Yeah, and the most interesting part is that about maybe not quite half the grid effectively just sat out the wet conditions of FP2, because at that time the forecasts were pretty sure we weren't going to have any more rain this weekend, and it was going to be a dry quali, a dry race. Pretty simple, don't risk the car, stay in the garage, stay nice and cozy. And that is not what's happening here. So some of the drivers out here are going to be going in a little bit blind.
Driving in the wet always fascinates me, to be honest, because can you practice? Well, if the drivers had been out yesterday in greasy conditions, would they have learned anything? Or is the track, even though today if it could be a bit wet, it's still going to be a different kind of wet or a different level of wet? It always is changing and evolving.
It is, but it still gets you into the rhythm, because you just don't drive in the wet that often, especially in an F1 calendar where they purposefully try to avoid the rainy seasons for most places. You know, we've been to the desert for the past couple of events, so there's definitely not been any rain there, neither in testing as well. So even if you're just doing a few laps, to get back into the swing of it, to feel out the car, feel how greasy the surface is, because that changes from track to track as well, and see if there's anything out there that might catch you out come race time, it is valuable.
Well, at the moment, it's dry-ish, I think it's fair to say. People have got their coats on. The air temperature's 14.5 degrees. It is sort of coat weather. There's 2 Williams lined up at the end of the pit lane getting ready to crack on. They're on the dry tyres, but what is the weather going to do? Will we see everybody head out and wait at the end of the pit lane and get some laps in early just to be safe? I wouldn't be surprised if we see that, but at the moment a lot of the drivers are still sitting in their cars and waiting to roll to the end of the pit lane. The session's going to start in just a minute and a half, but yeah, no, the circuit is dry at the moment, even though there's that drizzle out there, but we also don't know what level of grip there'll be once the Williams go out. A reminder that Max Verstappen leads the championship, 1 point ahead of Sergio Perez. The race gets underway in 24 hours' time, and you can hear that on BBC Radio 5 Live or here on the BBC Sport website, if that's where you're listening currently. And yeah, Verstappen leads by 1 point, and he was quickest in free practice earlier on too. Down in the pit lane, we've got Rosanna Tennant. Good afternoon, almost evening, Rosanna.
Absolutely, yeah. We're almost heading into evening, and tomorrow, actually, the clocks go back. So it's all going to change here in Melbourne. But right now, there's a bit of a cool change, Jack. That's what the locals say in Melbourne. A little bit chilly, quite breezy. A lot of people wearing rain jackets because you just never know here, do you? We've always spoken about the 4 seasons in one day. It's definitely been like that over the last few days. So I think we're probably expecting more of the same in this coming qualifying hour. Not sure who wants rain, who doesn't want rain. I know Lewis Hamilton wanted it on race day. Is he going to get it on quali day instead?
Yeah, maybe. There's a lot of people. There's 2 people sharing a sort of Kagul thing there. Everybody is now queuing up at the end of the pit lane. Well, I say everybody. It's the 2 Williams, the 2 Alfa Romeos, and I'm not sure who that is.
How well do you know your rear wings?
I know.
What the test is there.
There's 2 rear wings at the back, I think.
It's either the Alpha Tauris or the
Haas.
maybe.
AlphaTauri would be my guess.
I'm going to add to the list of people who really want it to rain the McLarens, because although they haven't been terrible in the dry conditions, not at all, they were really good in the wet when it rained in FP2. And in fact, it was hometown hero Oscar Piastri who was for a long time the quickest on track and doing a lot of laps in the wet yesterday. So if it does rain, he will be loving that.
For those of you playing the Guess the Rear Wing, I actually got it completely wrong, because I forgot that Orlen have swapped from Alfa Romeo to AlphaTauri this season, so I was fairly confident that it was Alfa Romeo, but it was actually AlphaTauri, but then it was actually Alfa Romeo behind them. Anyway, cars pouring out onto the circuit now. It is dry. Lando Norris joining, Joe, Hulkenberg, Albon, Piastri, Bottas, Tsunoda, Sargent, Magnussen, De Vries, Norris, all on a brand new set of the soft tyres, as you'd expect. And at the moment, it looks kind of dry-ish. They're coming down, well, I would say it is dry, as they come down now towards turn 3.
Interestingly, none of the big hitters have gone out in this early flurry. It's all the midfield group. You know, your Mercedes, Ferrari, Red Bull, Alpines, Aston Martins, they are all sat in pit lane still. Obviously,
Piastri.
Sorry, happy to take a little bit more risk.
Yeah, Piastri flashing now down towards turn 6 on his outlap, and he's getting stuck in on his outlap, isn't he? Trying to find where the grip is and get some temperature into the tyres.
That is the downside to queuing at the end of the pit lane, of course, is the longer that you sit there, the longer the tyres are out of the tyre warmers. And here in particular, it's pretty difficult to warm up the soft tyres, even for that first lap. So they're going to have to be working the tyres extra hard to get them up to speed. And the Williams have already crossed the line, but we're now getting a little bit of a traffic jam through the last sector as people try and open up that gap to get the space they need for the quali lap, which is about 3 seconds as a minimum what you want from the car in front.
Beautiful circuit in Melbourne, going around the Albert Park Lake, just a couple of miles south of the city centre, and the tall skyscrapers nestled in between there and the St Kilda beach. But all eyes on the circuit now, and Sargent's doing a double warm-up lap here, weaving around as he comes down towards turn 6. So not a full push here from Logan Sargent as he now makes his way towards turns 9 and 10. And I imagine the same is true of his teammate Alex Albon. Joe out there too. And again, these first sectors are okay. They're not going slowly, but they are still weaving around on the straight to try and get a bit more temperature in. Through comes the Haas of Kevin Magnussen. He's coming up towards turn 9 and 10. No weaving for him, and DRS open, so this is more of a push, I think, for Magnussen. Swings it through turns 9 and 10. Always one of my favourite places to watch an F1 car, to be honest, in the whole of the world. And Magnussen using all the curb on the exit of the tight right-hander of turn 11 at the end of the back straight, and now into the final couple of corners. We have also seen traffic be a bit of an issue over the free practice sessions, all three really, this weekend. So that could be something that plays out, especially in Q1 when all the cars are on track.
Yeah, it looks like that the teams have been struggling with GPS issues for pretty much the whole weekend. And we did have a red flag in FP1 to try and deal with that, or when they lost it completely. But yeah, still leaving the engineers a little bit blind, it seems.
Zach Brown watching on the McLaren pit wall. Multiple things to keep an eye on for him this weekend, actually, because McLaren are sort of part owners. I'm not exactly sure how it works, but have a big part of the Walkinshaw racing team that are racing in the Australian supercars. So he was in the back of one of those garages watching the Aussie supercars race this weekend, which have been great, actually. The second race was very short, but unbelievable. But anyway, Albon comes across the line to do a 1 minute 18.944. So he goes to the top of the times, 4/10 clear of Kevin Magnussen, just as everybody else pulls out the pits, and just as Logan Sargent has looped it, coming into the final corner. Looks as though maybe he's lost it getting on power coming out of turn 13. And he's returned to the pit lane, so Sargent will have to go again. Had a really scruffy qualifying in wherever we were last. Jeddah had a really scruffy qualifying in Jeddah, did Logan Sargent, did track limits and then had a spin, and that was unfortunate because the pace looked reasonable, but he's back in the pits now. Albon is quickest, now Hulkenberg is quickest on a 1:18.3, but Hulkenberg, Albon and Magnussen, the top three, separated by a second. Quite a big difference in lap times so far.
Yeah, you sense that people are still struggling to get their tyres up to temperature. We've seen a few people sliding wide ever so slightly, but on board with Logan as he didn't really make that big an error on the way and just slightly locked the front wheel and wasn't on the grass, but on the outside curb as he put on some throttle and just looped the rear end. But now we're coming back to live pictures and Verstappen is starting his lap all over the curbs on the exit of turns 1 and 2. Heading down into the big braking zone of turn 3. Bit of a slide as he gets on power, but he bundles it all up and carries on. No big drama.
Sergio Perez is also starting a lap, and he was a driver who really struggled in the third practice session earlier on today. He missed a lot of running because they were doing something at the rear of his car, and then went off and he's off. He's in the gravel. Perez has beached it. Perez has beached it and is out of qualifying, and the red flag is out. And the same corner he went off twice earlier on in free practice. It looks like he's done a third carbon copy today, Sergio Perez. Bizarre.
Now he has moved that car.
Yeah,
he's got a chance because the rain compacts the gravel, but it looks like so he's managed to reverse it away from the wall, but in taking first gear and trying to move forwards, he's beached himself. That's a gutting day for Checo. We're going to get a replay of it now into turn 3, and just as he started to curve the car in towards the corner on that slightly curved braking zone, picked up a lock on the inside front wheel, couldn't slow the car down in time and fired past the apex of the corner carrying a lot of speed, and then he couldn't get the car turned in the gravel and had to stop before he hit the barrier, and then obviously got beached. That's a shame.
Red flag is out then. Red flag out. And Sergio Perez, the second place man in the championship, just 1 point behind Max Verstappen, will be starting at the back of the grid. And to me, it looked like he was fairly conservative on the way into turn 3. Often he'd been braking kind of just after the 100-meter board. Looked like he was around about the 100-meter board, and it was his opening. He would have been taking it relatively steady, you would have thought, considering it was his first lap of the session and it's only Q1 and all of those kind of caveats.
You would have thought. There's a couple of factors at play that I'm sure Checo knew about but wouldn't have been helping his case, which are these warm-up issues with the front axle in particular, so his tyres may have still been a little bit cold even on this first lap, and there is a little bit of a tailwind going through turn 1 and turn 3 at the moment. And that's the kind of information that you will always get from your engineer, but it's all pushing the car to understeer wide and have those locks and robbing you of grip. But still, it's first big braking zone of the session for him, and it's ended in disaster.
And I was literally just saying about all the errors or problems he'd had, because he had the same at turn 1 as well.
You just had to jinx him, didn't you?
Yeah, I know. Yeah. So that's the sound again of Perez into the gravel.
We didn't sort out the issue, man. It was the same issue again. Copy.
Well, they had 2.5 hours in between practice and qualifying, so they must have thought they'd solved the issue, whatever the issue was. Well, we heard him earlier on, didn't we, saying, I've got all these problems, and the team saying, everything's fine. So, red flag out.
Now we're just getting a view of pit wall and some weather radar action, and it does look like the rain that was hanging around the circuit has actually passed through now, so there's nothing on the immediate in the immediate vicinity of the track anymore, hence why the leaders were probably a little bit more relaxed about getting out on track. And we still don't have any times for the top half of the grid, really, do we?
No. 11 minutes and 44 seconds to go. Sergio Perez trudging through the gravel trap, looking down at the ground, shaking his head. He will be at the back of the grid for the Grand Prix tomorrow. A lot of work to do for the Mexican, but as you say, only Tsunoda in 9th place. Only the top 9 have done a lap time so far. Hulkenberg quickest on an 18.3, half a second to Albon in 2nd, a second to Magnussen in 3rd, Piastri and Norris 4th and 5th, Joe 6th, De Vries 7th, Bottas 8th, Tsunoda 9th. No lap time for anybody else. They still have plenty of time with 11 minutes and 44 seconds to go, but the clock stops, of course, in a qualifying red flag. But yeah, such frustration for Sergio Perez as he makes his way out, and there should be a fairly short red flag session. The car is already hoisted up onto the tractor and getting removed. Rosanna Tennant is down in the paddock.
I am. I've actually hot-footed it, as they say, down to the media pen, where all the media are hoping Checo Perez will come. Who knows? Maybe he'll be so frustrated he'll wait till the end of the session to come and talk to us. But I think we were all expecting perhaps some big scalps this afternoon in qualifying, particularly in Q1, given the traffic. But I don't think we were expecting it because of an error or perhaps a mechanical issue or whatever befell Sergio Perez. And of course, I don't think we were expecting it from Red Bull, although FP3 was so troublesome for Checo. So I just wonder whether he just hadn't managed to dial himself in ready for this big qualifying day.
Yeah, I mean, for me, Jack, the errors have been so similar that they don't feel like they're driver error. They obviously are driver error, but they're all so similar that it's something that's weird is going on.
Yeah, I agree. I know what you mean. It would be very unusual if it was just down to Checo making the same mistake 6-7 times in a row. There must be something else going on here. Whether it's something that he could have predicted or not, who knows? But yeah, it's got to be something underlying issue in that Red Bull.
Jack, I was talking to some of the technical wizards in the F1 paddock between FP3 and qualifying, and we were discussing, I was talking about a torsion bar being the problem for Checo during FP3, because at the start of the session the mechanics were all over the back of the RB19, the Red Bull car, making changes to it and working on something. And I said, limbs were everywhere. They were all over the car. And actually, I think it might be the anti-roll bar that was causing a problem for Checo. So I don't know, Jack, how that feeds into what we're seeing then out on track in terms of Checo and how that would affect his driving and performance.
Normally, if there is some kind of an issue with the anti-roll bar, it controls, as you might think, it's the control of weight transfer through the rear of the car, and that does also then relate to the front of the car as well. It could be that there is an issue whereby there's an excess amount of play and softness at the rear of the car, which is creating an effective stiffness at the front, which is leading to these front locks. That would also create a massive balance shift in the car, and we should see him understeering like crazy everywhere, which I don't think we're seeing. And also you would see more of an effect probably on an individual side if there was an issue, like you would see him lock on one wheel rather than the other. And again, we haven't seen that. He's been locking both wheels. So, and that's where my technical knowledge ends. So I'm sure there are other things that can happen, but it stumped me. Sorry.
It seems everything you say seems logical. Session is going to restart in 13, 12, 11, 10 seconds till the cars head out, and Verstappen is actually the driver queued up at the end of the pit lane, ready to go with the Ferraris in behind. Session goes green now, and Verstappen pulls out onto the track, followed by Fernando Alonso in the Aston Martin. Then it's Lance Stroll in the other Aston Martin, the Williams of Alex Albon next out, then Sainz, then Leclerc, and then Lando Norris with 11.5 minutes to go. Everybody keen to get a lap time on the board now, because this is another one where another red flag could then leave you with just a bit of a one-shot shootout to get through to the next part of qualifying.
Yeah, I don't think they're now rushing to get out because of weather. They're rushing out, as you say, just to avoid playing with the risk of another red and putting themselves in a very difficult position in the last few minutes of the session. That's really what they want to avoid. Both Mercedes now heading out of the pits as well.
Russell ahead of Hamilton on that particular rollout. Alonso coming through. And through the left-hander of turns 9 and 10 on his outlap at the moment.
Super impressive that Alonso on the long curved back straight towards turns 9 and 10, just weaving with the DRS open. He's just got so much downforce in that car. He doesn't even need all of it. Just get rid of some.
So here comes Verstappen into the final corner, out across the line and down towards turn 1, up to 200 miles an hour before he gets onto the brakes into the right-hander of the first corner. Absolutely planted through there. And now the run down towards turn 3. 10 minutes to go. Verstappen has been through turn 3 without any trouble so far this weekend. Flicks it left at 4. Flat out through 5. And then down towards turn 6 now. His first sector split is 600ths down on Nico Hülkenberg. Hülkenberg's time half a second quicker than Alex Albon. Alonso's 6/10 down in the first sector on Hülkenberg. Stroll's only 1/10 down, so I think Alonso's made an error in the first third of the lap. Verstappen is now finding more time and is up on Hülkenberg as he comes down towards turn 11. Alonso has pretty much matched Verstappen in the... Well, no, he's 3/10 slower actually in the middle sector, half a second slower in the first sector. Must have been an error for Alonso in sector 1. Verstappen's got 2 more corners to go. On the power through turn 14, little feather of the throttle on the way in, and Verstappen goes fastest on a 1 minute 18.063, only 3/10 quicker than Nico Hülkenberg in the end. Alonso across the line goes 4th fastest on a 19.0, 1 second slower than Verstappen. Stroll slots into 3rd place. He's half a second away from Verstappen, so definitely some time to come for Alonso.
The Red Bull doesn't look fully dialed in yet. Maybe it was a warm-up issue, but he had a fair chunk of understeer on that lap, especially in the high-speed stuff, so I think there's more to come there. Now watching Russell flicking his car through turn 12 and coming to finish the lap through 13, going past a little bit of traffic from the McLaren trying to set off their lap, from 14 as well, looking pretty neat and tidy, and he goes into P5, just over a second off the pace still. Under a second off the pace.
And Hamilton goes 4th, 6/10 away from Verstappen. So Hülkenberg, he's done this a few times this season, Hülkenberg, where he's just banged in a really quick lap. Hasn't been able to necessarily produce it when it really matters in qualifying, but on occasion he pings them in, Hülkenberg.
That's his talent.
Yeah.
When I was at Renault, it was always his speciality that when the big moment came in quali, he could get the lap in, and it was a good lap. But yeah, let's see if he can carry it through for Q2, maybe Q3. On board with Albon now, he's gone purple in sector 2, dipping a wheel into the grass on the exit of turn 11 through 12. No problems. Turn 13, no lockup. He's done well. Pulls the car over as far to the left as he can before flicking into the last corner of 14. A little bit of curve on the way out, and DRS to the line, and it puts him P2. 800ths off Verstappen.
Yeah, quicker than Carlos Sainz, who comes across the line now in the Ferrari. 3rd quickest for Sainz. Then next across the line is Verstappen to start the lap, having done a cool down. Charles Leclerc only goes 7th fastest on that run, slower than Hamilton. Norris jumps up into 6th place, so this is pretty jumbled with 6 minutes and 40 seconds to go. It's pretty jumbled here in Q1.
Alonso going for his 2nd lap on this set, and it looks like they are working a little bit better for him now. He's purple by 2.5 up on Verstappen's time, so flying now, and he's come through sector 2, looking pretty good there. Personal best, flicks it through 9 and 10, no issues. A little bit of curve on the way out. Sparks kicking up from the floor of his car, preparing for the big braking zone of turn 11. Misses the apex ever so slightly, but not going to have lost too much time there. Into turn 12, slight lift out of the throttle. Looked a little bit tentative on the way into 13, but gets through it in one piece and out onto the main straight.
Fastest for Alonso, 1 minute 17.832, couple of tenths quicker than Max Verstappen. Albon third, fourth is Sainz, fifth is Hülkenberg, and then it's Stroll, Norris, Ocon, Hamilton, Gasly, the top 10. De Vries is up into 11th place. Verstappen's now back to the top of the times. 12th is Zhou, 13th Leclerc, 14th Sargent, 15th Russell. Now Tsunoda goes up into 13th, so at the moment eliminated would be Russell, Bottas, Piastri, Magnussen and Perez. Perez won't be setting a time.
Stroll's just popped up into P3 as well next to his teammate. A few tenths further down, but still a good lap from him.
Now Russell comes through and he goes up into 4th place, just ahead of Alex Albon. Hamilton goes up into 6th position, just behind Alex Albon. Leclerc is on the bubble at the moment in 15th position. So 5 minutes to go. I wonder if anyone's going to pit or if they're going to keep going on these tyres, because they're trying to warm them up, basically. Sergio Perez has just returned to the pit lane on the back of a motorcycle, which is the sound you can hear rumbling down the back of the paddock. But I wonder if everyone will just keep going. Russell said yesterday after free practice that we're going to see just lots of laps in qualifying.
I mean, we saw it there with Alonso that the second lap usually is quicker and the first lap is almost an on-the-limit warm-up lap, effectively. And the Mercedes have been doing very deliberate prep laps, so it would be a risk now. With 4 minutes to go, if you box now, change quickly, get out, 3 minutes to go, you would have time to do an out prep and push, but that's all you would have time for.
Alex Albon improves up into 3rd place in the Williams. So Verstappen quickest, Alonso second, Albon third, half a second away from Verstappen. Stroll is 4th. Sargent is just starting a lap now after his spin earlier on. He is back out on circuit, but down in 16th position currently. Here comes Charles Leclerc into the final couple of corners. 3 minutes and 40 seconds to go. Sainz, his teammate, goes up into 4th place. Leclerc comes through and he goes 8th. So that Ferrari pace is, I would suggest, fairly concerning for Charles Leclerc at the moment. Out of the final corner comes Magnussen. He's currently slowest in 19th position. He manages to jump up into 9th place ahead of his teammate Nico Hülkenberg. Piastri comes through to go up to 14th, slightly slower than his teammate Lando Norris. Gasly now jumps up into 11th position. Here comes Logan Sargent through the final corner. Hülkenberg does it again, up into 5th place now for Nico Hülkenberg. Logan Sargent in the Williams goes up into 12th spot. So Piastri's on the bubble in 15th at the moment. Well, now Zhou jumps up, so Piastri's knocked out as it stands with less than 3 minutes to go. Ocon up into 8th place. De Vries and Tsunoda, the last two drivers to come through on a run on this particular tour. Verstappen is about to improve and find some more time up at the top. Across the line comes Nick De Vries. He goes up into 12th.
So McLaren's out at the moment.
Yeah, Norris, Piastri, Tsunoda, Bottas, the drivers that would be eliminated as it stands. Verstappen does improve to a 17.3, so he's now 4 tenths quicker than Alonso. Yuki Tsunoda goes 13th. So now Sargent, the two McLarens and Bottas, the drivers that would be eliminated. Russell jumps up into 3rd place, so he finds a little bit more time. Lap time's improving massively, so Leclerc really in the Ferrari is the driver who, of the front runners, is in a little bit of trouble in 10th place.
Yeah, in his favour is that nobody is pitting to go for another set of tyres with the last few minutes of the session. Norris does jump out of the elimination zone to go into 12th place, so he's brought himself a little bit of time there. So in Leclerc's favour, it's less likely that people are going to be able to improve on this final lap because you're just losing tyre life at this stage. It's possible, and I would say the guy in the elimination zone now that could do it is possibly Sargent, and we've got Piastri going very slowly in the final sector. I don't think it's a problem. They're just looking for clean air, aren't they?
Yeah, he's just looking for some gaps in the traffic, but then he keeps getting overtaken by people who are coming through to take their own gap in the traffic. And all this time, you're losing a little bit of tyre temperature. Right, here comes Bottas. He's slowest at the moment in 19th place. He's done a reasonable first sector. What's he got compared to Pierre Gasly in the middle sector? He's coming up now towards turn 9 and 10. He could be in a bit of traffic chaos in the end of this run. He's only 100th up on Pierre Gasly. So this isn't looking great for Valtteri Bottas at the moment. Kicks up a load of, the bottom of the car scraping along the curb on the exit of turns 9 and 10. He's down now at 11, coming into the final couple of corners. And the traffic does seem to have cleared up for Bottas, so shouldn't be too bad. Gets on the power now. This will be his last effort, though. Valtteri Bottas, I don't think it's going to be a stunner. Here he comes across the line. He remains slowest. Horrible, horrible session this for Valtteri Bottas. He might end up qualifying slowest of the 19 drivers that are still in the running, because Sergio Perez is out of the session. Magnussen goes him into 10th place. Carlos Sainz in the Ferrari comes through to go 5th fastest.
Piastri currently half a tenth unsafe as he goes through sector 2 on his lap, so he needs to do more in this final sector if he's going to jump up.
The checkered flag is out. Pierre Gasly comes through the final corner, jumps him into 13th place. Charles Leclerc has returned to the pits, so Ferrari seem to be happy with that 11th spot that he should be safely through, and I think he will be. Joe doesn't make it through, but out-qualifies Bottas again. Oscar Piastri in the McLaren, out across the line, and he doesn't make it. Piastri's eliminated in 16th spot. Logan Sargeant in the Williams is 18th, so Piastri out in 16th, Joe out in 17th, Sargeant out in 18th, Bottas out in 19th, Perez out in the gravel. Both AlphaTauris making it through, both Hasses making it through, and Alex Albon 7th fastest. He got that really hooked up, did Albon?
I mean, at least for Albon, the Williams looks absolutely mega this weekend. He's been kind of up there all through the FP sessions, but we weren't sure if that was a genuine pace or not, but it seems to be. And as well as the Haas cars, both of them in the top 10 currently. It could make for a really interesting Q3, but yeah, gutting for Piastri. He misses out by less than half a tenth, 46 hundredths at his first home Grand Prix. On board with Leclerc as he dives into turn 11, and he just gets this little snap of oversteer at the apex and drags a ton of gravel onto the track as he dips 2 wheels off there and doesn't do the floor of his car any favours either. But it was very close for the 3 knocked out, Piastri, Zhou and Sargeant, all of them less than a tenth off the cut-off point.
So, as you say, Piastri, Joe, Sargeant, Bottas and Perez, the 5 drivers eliminated in Q1. Rosanna.
Jack, I'm still waiting for Checo Perez. He came through the paddock as we watched him get off the scooter. He then headed all the way down the paddock. We thought he was coming to talk to us in the media pen, but he's actually gone to the FIA. And I imagine that's because he sort of has to request to take part in the Grand Prix now, given he hasn't set a time. So the 107% rule sort of kicking in, but also just requesting, I'm sure, that he'll be a part of tomorrow's race. So I'm patiently waiting to talk to him and find out what went wrong.
Well, he's now back in the garage, actually, Rosanna. So having been to there, he's now popped into the garage to have a little bit of a conversation with his engineer, because they've got quite a bit of work to do. Here's Bottas's radio.
I'm sorry, Valtteri, we are not through.
That was it from my side. Like, lost a bit of with the traffic in the end, but otherwise, not more.
So Bottas saying he had no more. 2 tenths slower than his teammate Zhou Guanyu, which is always a tough one to hear. Logan Sargeant out of the session as well, shaking his head in the Williams.
He's been a little bit on the back foot ever since his lack of running in FP1, hasn't he?
Yeah.
So it's a shame, seeing as the Williams does look so strong this weekend, but yeah, not been the smoothest weekend for the rookie.
And we're only 3 races in, but I'm struggling to get a handle on Sargeant at the moment. You know what I mean? Because sometimes he looks pretty strong, actually, and he's there or thereabouts, but then, as I say, qualifying in Jeddah in particular was sort of full of rookie mistakes. But he is a rookie, so it's fine. But there comes a point where it's not, and you want to kind of see his true pace, really.
Yeah, I mean, did you see the onboard of his first lap at Bahrain in the race, and the way that he managed the field there? And that was brilliant. That was, great racing and really, really good decision making. And there have also been flashes of pace where he has, on the occasional run, been quicker than Albon. But yeah, in particular in the last couple of races, it seems to have struggled.
So Q2 will be getting underway in 3 minutes' time. Battle for the top 10 is going to be very, very interesting. You're gonna need to nail your timing, I think, with the tires. That's going to be the key thing. It's not just going to be your standard go out, do a run, come in, do a run. Especially with even the top teams, we often see them do one run in Q2 and then just go out to make sure they go through. But I don't think it's going to be that sort of qualifying session.
No, I mean, Ferrari for sure will need to do both runs because Leclerc was not in the top 10 with his first run. Albon, the 2 Haas cars, the 2 Alpine cars, they're going to be the ones scrapping over the remaining places once you see the likes of the Red Bulls, Mercedes, and probably the Ferraris go through. And there's also the question mark of Stroll. He was kind of up there in that session and less than a 10th off his teammates. So, yeah, there's a lot of people fighting over the bottom half of that top 10.
Certainly are. 2 minutes and 10 seconds remaining until the second part of qualifying gets underway. Just polishing up Hulkenberg's car. In the end, he was just about a 10th quicker than Kevin Magnussen, was Nico Hulkenberg. 9th and 10th for the 2 Hasses, just about. And if they can do that again, they'll be very pleased to both be through into Q3. De Vries and Tsunoda, you would have to suggest would have their work cut out to get into the final part of qualifying. But Verstappen in the end was 3 tenths quicker than George Russell and Lewis Hamilton at the end of that first part of qualifying, and they were all pushing right until the end. So that's a little bit more encouraging for the Mercedes, that they were ahead of the Alpines and the Aston Martins, because they're always in danger of getting stuck in behind. But Q2 is when we do tend to. It's a bit of a problem at the. I don't know if it's a problem at the front left of Albon's car, or whether they're just going for a different set of tyres, or just getting some space for them to wheel. It's a bit of an odd one that they're taking the left front off and nothing else.
Yeah, it looks like there's maybe a slight issue. Not too much panic in the garage, but there's something going on with that front left corner.
Yeah, so we'll keep an eye on that one for Alex Albon. The other question is going to be whether the drivers head straight out onto the circuit here, or whether they're going to, because it's a slightly shorter session, this one, 15 minutes instead of 18 minutes, or whether, because we saw them just pound round in Q1, maybe they wait a couple of minutes and then pound round in Q2. But at the end of the pit lane is Nick de Vries.
Very keen, isn't he? And we've got one of the Ferraris coming up. It looks like Leclerc, possibly. Alonso rolling to the end of pit lane. So we've got a few of the big players coming out.
10 seconds till the second part of qualifying gets underway. So yeah, some of the big hitters heading towards the end of the pit lane. Light goes green now. A reminder, Sergio Perez in the Red Bull won't be taking part in this session after beaching it in the gravel at turn 3 on his first lap in Q1, and he will therefore start the Australian Grand Prix tomorrow at the back of the grid. You can hear it in 23.5 hours wherever you're listening right now, as the cars now make their way out onto the circuit, and pretty much all of them do, to be honest. Well, Verstappen's not. He's still up on the jacks in the Red Bull garage.
With a more conventional session coming to us, hopefully, we will see more and more issues with people backing up into the last few corners. So Verstappen will want to avoid all of that mess. Even the cars that were waiting at the end of pit lane were taking it quite easy on the getaway to leave themselves enough of a gap to try and anticipate that slowing down at the end of the lap. But Russell and Gasly, another couple of guys that are staying back and trying to wait for a bit more space on the circuit.
Yeah, the 2 Mercedes, the 2 Alpines and the Red Bull of Max Verstappen are the 5 cars that have decided not to head straight out. Everybody else on the circuit straight away, with a little under 14 minutes to go, and they're all pushing on their outlaps at the moment. Lando Norris in the McLaren, the only McLaren to make it through into this second part of qualifying, after his teammate and home hero Oscar Piastri got eliminated and will line up 16th on the grid for the Grand Prix tomorrow. Now here comes Charles Leclerc. Bit of concern for Ferrari. Well, I'd say here comes Charles Leclerc. He's cruising through the final corner, so he's going for for a double warm-up lap, but concern for Ferrari, I would suggest, considering that pace in the first part of qualifying. It might be now that they turn the engines up and start to give it full beans, but if not, then they're in a bit of a world of pain.
I'd be surprised if they had a lot left in the tank, just because of how close Leclerc got to the danger zone in that first session. It would be a nice surprise. They did look stronger than this in FP3, so I'm wondering where that pace has gone.
Fernando Alonso flicking it left at turn 4 in the Aston Martin. The wise old Spaniard now flinging it right into turn 6. His first sector is, he's on a push lap here, Alonso.
But the pattern for Alonso has been, he does push the first lap, doesn't prep like some of the others like Ferrari and Mercedes, but then invariably his second lap is quicker. So he almost does this as a sacrificial warm-up lap, even though he's pushing.
Coming down into turn 11, 200 miles an hour down to 70 for the flick right-hander. A little lift before tucking the nose in at 150 miles an hour into turn 12. Now 2 corners left, turn 13 and turn 14. Out across the line comes Alonso, and he goes to the top of the times on a 1 minute 17.681. Lance Stroll, his teammate, is going a little quicker than him as he comes into the final corner. 200s up on Alonso after the middle sector. Norris goes up into second, but that's not a push lap either. So it's the 2 Aston Martins that do push laps straight away, and they do a 17.6 and a 17. No, they both do 1 minute 17.6 actually. Stroll fractionally quicker than Alonso. Russell, Hamilton and Verstappen have left the pit lane. Ocon and Gasly have not. Those are the 2 drivers yet to leave the pits. Max Verstappen, we're just seeing coming down through turn 1. He's got a bit of something attached to the sort of front suspension, like a bit of rubbish or something.
Tear off, maybe?
Is it a tear off, yeah.
Or I don't know if the attention was on that, or the fact that he was definitely all 4 wheels over the yellow line, using all of the curb and AstroTurf. It's not usually a place that they enforce track limits, though.
Right, Charles Leclerc's going a little quicker here. He's done a best of anyone in sectors 1 and 2. Not in the session so far, but certainly in this second part of qualifying. Here comes Leclerc, and he does a 1 minute 17.5. That's 0.7 of a second quicker than he managed in Q1. So that is a bit more like it for Charles Leclerc. Carlos Sainz in the other Ferrari comes through the final corner, and he goes up into 4th place on a 17.7. That's only 0.2 quicker than he managed in Q1, and a couple of tenths slower than his teammate Leclerc, but that is a bit more like it for the Monegasque man. Magnussen jumps up into 5th position. Verstappen is pushing as he comes through the middle sector. Lando Norris has been off down at turn 3, I think, because he had to back out on that lap. 10 minutes to go. Hulkenberg, there he is again, up into 3rd place, splitting the 2 Aston Martins. Albon goes up into 6th.
Verstappen diving now into turn 11, getting that pretty much perfect. Into turn 12, the fast right-hander, looking pretty good. His middle sector not quite as quick as that of Albon, who actually was purple in sector 2, but pretty darn close. And coming through sector 3 now, across the line, and it puts him into P1, 17.2 and 3.5 tenths ahead of Leclerc.
Fernando Alonso is quicker in sector 1 though than Verstappen, coming through sector 2 now, and he's lost a little bit of ground. George Russell and Lewis Hamilton are on push laps also here, currently 12th and 13th because they haven't really got a lap time on the board. The 2 Alpines have left the pit lane and are starting their runs. Alonso improving as he comes into the final 2 corners, onto the brakes into the tight left-hander of turn 13, then accelerating out through 14. Alonso across the line. Where does this put him on his 2nd flying lap? 2nd fastest. Oh, only slower than Verstappen by about, what, 0.06 of a second there, the gap between Verstappen and Alonso. Both 0.3 ahead of Leclerc.
Wasn't his best sector 2, but that first sector was absolutely stonking. It was nearly 2 tenths quicker than his previous best, which was also purple at the time, and over 1 tenth quicker than Verstappen.
For the first laps for Hamilton and Russell, they go 7th and 8th quickest. Hamilton 7th, Russell 8th, Albon 9th, 10th for Kevin Magnussen. We're just having a look at, Norris just couldn't gather the rear up as he came into turn 3.
That was a lot of speed he was carrying in. He didn't actually have any lock-up. It just looked like the amount of speed that he was carrying in, the rear couldn't handle it, and as soon as he turned in, it started to let go, but he managed to get enough rotation in that he could just skip across the gravel rather than doing a Perez.
So Norris back on his way and has been through the pits and is now heading back out. Nick De Vries coming through the final corner now. Esteban Ocon about to come across the line also. So De Vries remains 12th. Ocon does, well, they're on prep laps, the two Alpines, Ocon and Gasly. So they've gone out a lot later than everyone else. And I think they're just going to run now, Alpine, to the checkered flag. We'll see if anyone else comes into the pits. I mean, Verstappen has, and Magnussen has, but Verstappen will be safely through, I would have thought.
Yeah, Hülkenberg has started a lap, whereas his teammate, like he says, has boxed. Imagining they will put on a fresh set of softs. They've got enough time to do it, warm them up and get into a good window with them. But now watching Tsunoda, who gets very, very close to the grass on the entry to 13, flirting with disaster there, but he gets away with it, uses all the road on the exit of the last corner, and that puts him only 10th. He's 1/10 safe ahead of Magnussen, who has been moved into the first drop position.
But Ocon and Gasly are both going quicker than Yuki Tsunoda. Ocon more notably so. He's and Alonso's on another push lap, flying through the first corner. Ocon now into 13. Has a little fight with the car in the middle of the corner, and a fight with the car at 13 as well. So might have lost a little bit of ground in the final couple of sectors there, Esteban Ocon. He still goes 8th fastest, comfortably clear of Yuki Tsunoda and splitting the two Mercedes. And Gasly goes 12th fastest. So at the moment, eliminated would be Tsunoda, Gasly, Magnussen, De Vries and Norris. Albon is on the bubble in the Williams, so he's got a shot at Q3 here, Alex Albon, and Hülkenberg is stood up there in 5th place in the Haas. Here comes Norris through the first sector. I don't think he's pushing here, Norris, so not here comes Norris. Oh no, I think he is 28.6. No, he's 2 seconds off in sector 1, so he's not pushing.
Alonso has set another purple sector 1, but his sector 2 isn't the best. He's dropped a little bit of time, that pretty much all the time that he's gained in sector 1, so I don't think this is going to be an improvement from him. And we're now getting to the point where those tyres, like in FP1, they've lost their best, and more cars are diving into the pits now to swap to a new set.
Yeah, Russell jumps up into 4th place in that Mercedes. As you say, Alonso lost half a second actually in the final sector, so that's not ideal for him. So that does suggest that the tyres are maybe gone a little, and leaving it a little late now with 5 minutes to go to get the best out of it. Still enough time, and Alonso's up in 2nd place. I don't think Alonso will put a new set on, I wouldn't have thought. He'll probably just go out again on the same set, would be my prediction. Won't want to waste the tyre if they don't need
pit
to.
Lane, just twiddling his thumbs,
Yeah.
enjoying the show.
Less than 5 minutes to go. Lando Norris now on a flying lap, down in towards turn 1. Neat and tidy through there. And now turn 3 is next up for the British driver in the McLaren. Makes it through turn 3 comfortably this time around. We'll see what his... Really flinging it through turn 4. Back end stepped out a little, kept it together, and through the first sector he's 600ths up on Alex Albon, who's in 10th place at the moment in the Williams.
Yeah, he's definitely struggling with the rear of that car a little bit, just wrestling it through the first sector. He's now got the very fast turns 9 and 10 to come up, and he doesn't want to have any issue with the rear there. Flicks it through, a little bit of curb on the way in, no issues. It looks a lot more stable there at high speed, so that's good. Heading now towards turn 11. He's got a few slow cars ahead of him, but they all get out of the way, and he just dips a wheel into the gravel on the exit. Sparks flying up from the under tray of the car. Is he still pushing, or is he backed out of it now? It looks like he may have backed out. No, he's still going for it. He wants to finish the lap.
So through the final corner of Lando Norris, a very hustly lap for Norris, and he goes up into 10th place. So he manages to get ahead of Alex Albon, and he will get a cool down and then another lap Albon, meanwhile, has done the fastest middle sector of anyone. Ocon comes through in his 9th fastest. Gasly goes up into 10th, but here comes Alex Albon. Where does he jump to in the Williams? 9th. So Albon up into 9th place. Again, he'll get time for a cool down and then another push, but he's right in the mix here, Alex Albon, in the Williams for Q3, and it's not just sort of one magic lap out of nowhere, it's consistently in that fight.
From Hamilton in P8 to P11, it is 300ths of a second. That's how close it is currently for the drop zone, as we just see a replay of Lando taking a little bit of carbon off the bottom of his car.
Verstappen is back out on circuit and on another push lap, but he's going to be safely through whatever happens. No one else is on a quick lap just yet, with 2.5 minutes to go. They're all waiting for the perfect time to push.
Leclerc has left it late. Ferrari, both of them. I'm surprised that they're not giving themselves the chance to do a second lap. They're basically going to have to do it on the first lap. And Sainz is not completely out of the woods here.
Yeah, so Sainz has just started. So he's doing a double prep here, Sainz. He's doing another one now, and Leclerc will have time to double prep as well. Double build, whatever you want to call it. 2 warm-up laps. But they are out a little bit later than everyone else, with 1 minute and 50 seconds to go. The current top 10 is Verstappen, Alonso, Leclerc, Russell, Stroll, Hülkenberg, Sainz, Hamilton, Albon and Ocon. That's the top 10 that would advance through as it stands. Eliminated would be Gasly, Norris, De Vries, Tsunoda and Magnussen, with 1 minute and 30 seconds left on the clock. Ocon starts a push lap now, as does Gasly, as does Norris. And Verstappen's just avoided a little, I don't know what animal that is. There's a little, like, I don't know what animal that is. It's like a little bird just sort of waddling like across the track.
Yeah.
But it looks like one of those birds that doesn't fly.
Yes.
To me. It looked like a really mini ostrich.
To add to this conversation, I'm sorry, I have no idea.
I was looking over across you in
hope. It looks
hope.
very cute. No, I'm sorry.
Stick to the anti-roll bar explanation.
I will. Magnussen on his quick lap now looks a little bit more fruity, so he's pushing on. He's 200ths up on Ocon's time through the first sector, so he probably will need a little bit more than that. Hülkenberg, meanwhile, is 2 tenths down from Verstappen. Which I can't tell you how safe that makes him, I'm sorry. Quick maths not helping. Magnussen through sector 2, and he's now 300ths unsafe to Ocon. He's not going to have time for another lap after this, so this will be it. Albon has gone purple, meanwhile, in sector 2 yet again. He really likes that middle sector, so it's going to be a strong lap from him.
No improvement from Esteban Ocon as he comes across the line, and even though that was a push lap, so he drops out of the top 10 at the moment, because Pierre Gasly, his teammate, jumps up into 4th place, so Ocon could be done. Magnussen is done. Checker flag falls. The Haas driver doesn't make it through. His teammate Hülkenberg comes across the line and goes 3rd fastest. Hülkenberg absolutely rapid today in qualifying. 3rd quickest for him. Albon pits, so Albon must have made a mistake and he's into the pit lane, so he's the driver on the bubble. Hamilton needs to find some time here, as does Carlos Sainz, and Sainz is not finding a huge amount of time, but there isn't really anyone behind who could improve and push him out.
It's just Norris. What's Norris doing? He's done a 27.1 in the first sector, which is 3 or 4 tenths off the best. It's not amazing. He's just gone through sector 2, and it is a personal best of a 17.7, but that is also not incredible. He's going to need to pull something out in sector 3.
Sainz does improve to jump up into 3rd place, so Albon is on the bubble in 10th, Hamilton is 9th, Tsunoda only goes 12th fastest, so it's basically going to be Norris or Albon who will be eliminated from this second part of qualifying. Ocon will be out, Tsunoda out, Magnussen out, De Vries out. What can Norris do out of the final corner? Cuts the timing beam, it's 13th. So Albon in the Williams is through. Ocon eliminated in 11th, Tsunoda 12th, Norris 13th, Magnussen 14th, De Vries 15th. Albon makes it through in 10th. Stroll through, Gasly through, Hamilton through, Russell through, Hülkenberg through, Leclerc, Sainz, Alonso and Verstappen all through. Verstappen did find some more pace and ended up 3 tenths clear of the rest of the field. Just seeing what happened to Albon as he got onto the brakes into turn 12. Whoa.
He just
11.
whacked the inside curb, or the apex curb, and actually as he was coming into the braking zone, he'd taken his left hand off the wheel as if to make a change, and then sort of double checked himself and went, no, I won't do it, and then went to brake and just misjudged it a little bit. You know, if you take that curve, we've seen it with a couple of other cars, it just spits the rear out. So, but even with that, he's through, and it's now starting to make a bit of sense why on his social media earlier today he put out a post saying, how do you say I'm looking forward to qualifying in Australia? He knew that they had pace.
And it's P13.
I know.
That was Lando Norris's radio. Disappointment for Norris, but out-qualifies his teammate Piastri. McLaren are in a world of pain, so it's not hugely surprising. Here's Ocon's radio.
Okay, checking flag.
Got traffic there.
Yeah, I saw. Okay, unfortunately that's us out with that. That was very close.
Ocon then complaining of traffic at the end of that lap, and he is eliminated in 11th spot. Andrew Benson, the BBC's chief F1 writer, thinks it was probably a moorhen or a coot from the lake that was running across the track. I also have nothing to add to that.
He said it also definitely wasn't a black swan.
Yes, apparently
so
not.
So can eliminate that one.
And Rosanna reckons it was a moorhen. So there we go. We have all the info now. Just having a look at Yuki Tsunoda, who's getting a bit riled up because he was asked to come into the weighbridge at one point during that session.
Yeah, he's trying to get through as quickly as possible because presumably he wanted to get out for another run, and he's gesticulating like crazy with the FIA officials because he wanted to drive onto the scales, which you're not allowed to do for obvious safety reasons. And then he wasn't lined up properly on the scales themselves, and they had to redo it, which obviously infuriated him even further. He does have a temper, Yuki, doesn't he?
Yeah. He's out-qualified Nick De Vries, though. 12th quickest for Tsunoda on an 18.0. 3/10 quicker, actually, than Nick De Vries. And De Vries only did an 18.6 on that final lap, so his final run he was 6/10 off, out-qualifying Yuki Tsunoda. Right, fight for... Look, Verstappen looks favourite for pole position. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, he's looked pretty assured so far. Not been making too many mistakes, if at all. He quietly extended his lead in that session while all of the fight for elimination spots was going on. So it ended up at 2/10 rather than, I think it was half a tenth that Alonso had whittled it down to. But he just eased that gap back out again. So yeah, he looks comfortable. I think he should have this in the bag if he gets a clean lap in.
The 5 per second is going to be interesting. Alonso and Sainz and Leclerc all separated by less than about a tenth of a second. The Aston Martins and the two Ferraris. It was a couple of tenths back to the Mercedes. What can Nico Hülkenberg do in the Haas as well?
That's got to be the story so far, is just how well he's doing, and out qualifying the Mercedes at the moment. It's pretty impressive. I mean, Magnussen also, I have to say, was doing a really good job. He just didn't quite get it together for that final lap, but be exciting to see where he can put that car in the top 10. And I should say as well, although Verstappen does look the strong favourite here, that gap is not so big that he can afford to make any mistakes. If he does have a small lock up here or there, that can easily throw you 2 or 3 tenths in a lap. So Alonso just needs to keep nipping at his heels, doing a good job himself, and assure that they will be there to pick up the pieces if something does go wrong.
Q3 starting in 2 minutes, so let's head down to Rosanna.
Thanks, Jack. Yeah, we lost Oscar Piastri, didn't we? Didn't make it through to Q2. I wonder whether that pressure of being here in Melbourne, racing in front of his home crowd for the very first time, got to him. This is his reaction to going out in Q1.
Yeah, obviously a shame to be out in Q1, I think. Yeah, just missing those last couple of tenths. Don't really know I'm sure there's some margin on driving. It felt like a good lap, but nothing amazing. So we've said the whole season it's so tight between the teams that are around us, and I think today showed that. Just not quite quick enough.
Jackie was also saying that he thinks it's going to be incredibly difficult to make overtakes tomorrow, and I actually went on to ask him a little later that, will that fourth DRS zone play a part? And he said he really didn't think it would. So I think it's going to be a difficult day for Oscar, and similarly a difficult day for his teammate Lando Norris tomorrow, I think, too. Yeah,
well, we did see in Saudi Arabia, didn't we, the difficulty that the McLarens had, even getting past... I think it was Logan Sargent they were trying to pass at the end of the Grand Prix, and were kind of stuck behind him and didn't have enough straight line speed to get through, and that's on a circuit where overtaking is quite relatively doable, but we'll see what the McLarens can do tomorrow. Max Verstappen rolling to the end of the pit lane then. 12 minutes this session, beginning in 30 seconds, and they're all straight out there to queue up at the end of the pits. I don't remember seeing that in Q3 very often.
No, I wonder if they're still a bit suspicious of the weather. It is still pretty overcast, very grey, so the chance of some spots would not be out of the question. And even if it wouldn't be full-on rain, it could still slow down the track enough that you'd be at a disadvantage. So, and he's got the time in hand to, give up a little bit of track evolution by going out first.
Could also be that they all want to do 2 prep laps or 2 push laps or whatever, and 2 runs of multiple laps means you got to get straight out there rather than your normal out push in where you've got way more time.
It's definitely a little bit tighter than it would be traditionally.
So Verstappen first out on circuit as he heads down towards the 90-degree right-hander at turn 3, the swimming pool complex on his left-hand side, and then makes his way around what is regularly a car park through the left-hander of turn 4. Football stadium on his right-hand side. Here's Charles Leclerc.
And we are sure the rain won't come earlier, right?
No, we believe for the last 3 to 4 minutes.
Okay. So, a combination of the two, I think, wanting to get 2 runs in and wanting to avoid the rain.
Will they get 2 runs in if it's going to be the last 3 to 4 minutes? How much do we trust the Ferrari weather radar? But if it would be the last 3 to 4 minutes, it'd be very tight for them to get 2 strong runs, and maybe if they just did 1 lap on each, which has not been the favourable tactic so far. It's usually been a couple of laps that you want.
10 minutes and 41 seconds to go. The final part of qualifying in Melbourne for the Australian Grand Prix. Charles Leclerc took pole position last year. The 4 poles before that were taken by Lewis Hamilton, but I don't think he will be in contention today. Red Bull have only won in Melbourne once, back in 2011 with Sebastian Vettel, which I found a remarkable record, and one they will look to change this weekend. There's only 1 Red Bull, though, in this final part of qualifying, after Sergio Perez skidded off into the gravel at turn 3, and Max Verstappen is pushing straight away through the first sector. He comes. He's pretty much matched Fernando Alonso for the best first sector of the session so far.
He had a little bit of a moment through turn 4. You could hear the tyres just squeaming a little bit, and squealing, one of the 3. He didn't lose a lot of time from it, still put in a very good first sector, and he's now through sector 2, also looking pretty strong there. But he's not leaving anything on the table. He's not worried about any warm-up issues on this lap. He's just going for it.
Yeah. Alonso is not pushing in this on this lap, nor is Sainz and Leclerc.
Very wide there in the penultimate corner for Verstappen. He didn't fully lock the wheels, but he definitely lost a bit of time there.
Yeah, 17.5 for Verstappen. That's half a second slower than he managed in the second part of qualifying. Nico Hülkenberg is on a push lap here. He's only a couple of tenths down on Verstappen after the middle sector. Thought he was going to be a bit too wide at turn 11. Managed to keep it all together. Whoa. Bouncing over the curbs on the exit of turn 12. This is hustle city for Nico Hülkenberg.
This ragged end to the lap. Where's it going to put him?
across the line, a 1 minute 18.0, half a second slower than Max Verstappen. And those are the only two drivers that have done push laps straight away. And now Alonso is pushing as he comes through the middle sector.
Just getting a replay of Verstappen and having his moment in turn 13, and it was just a little bit of a slide from the rear as he went past the apex, and he just had to give up a meter of track position effectively and go really, really wide out there. Alonso looking pretty strong. He's heading into the final sector now through turn 11. No issues. He's purple in sector 1, a strong sector 2. Coming through the penultimate corner, no such issues for him there. Little kick of the rear as he gets on power, trying to build up speed as quickly as he can through the last corner and across the line, and he goes P1 by just under 0.3 of a second. It's a strong lap for him.
Yep, still slightly slower than he managed in Q2. Here come the Ferraris now out of the final corner. Charles Leclerc first across the line. He goes second fastest, ahead of Max Verstappen. Carlos Sainz through the final turn now. He gets ahead of Verstappen as well. Lewis Hamilton comes out of the final corner. Russell goes second. Hamilton goes quickest. 1 minute 17.2 for Lewis Hamilton. So all of a sudden, Verstappen is shuffled down to 6th place, despite only being 0.3 away. But he is on a push lap now as he comes through sector 1. Gasly across the line in 7th. Alex Albon's on a quick lap too.
Purple in sector 2. He was missing a couple of attempts in sector 1. But if you can have a strong sector 3, it looks pretty clean through the last 2 corners as he comes across the line. It only puts him 7th. It wasn't the best sector 3, half a second off.
But here comes Verstappen coming through the middle sector split now. What's he got compared to Hamilton? He's only 200ths up here, Verstappen. Swings through the left and the right at turns 9 and 10 with such speed. And now down to 200 miles an hour before swinging it into turn 12, right up towards the exit curb. He's having to push here, Verstappen, if he wants to get to pole position, or to provisional pole at least on these first runs. Feathers the throttle through the final corner. Verstappen across the line, back to the top of the times. By 9 thousandths of a second, Verstappen is on provisional pole position at the moment, ahead of Hamilton. But the top 4 separated by less than a tenth.
Just getting a replay on him on the exit of turn 10, dipping his wheels as far as he dares into that curb and getting a big puff of smoke as he scrapes the bottom of his car along there, but he just managed to pull a lap out.
Is the rain coming? Rain in 4 minutes.
Sainz being told rain in 4 minutes, so that could be enough for Verstappen, but we've got 5.5 minutes to go, so if they hurry, they can get out again. So the order is Verstappen, Hamilton, Alonso, the top 3, Russell 4th, Sainz in 5th, Leclerc, Albon, Gasly, the 8 drivers to have set a lap time.
Ferrari mechanics rushing to get the new tyres on. They're trying to do this as quickly as possible. The guy that's jumped all of them is Hülkenberg. He's on his outlap while most of the others are either still finishing their first run or in the pits changing the tyres. So Hülkenberg, if he gets lucky with the rain here, I don't want to say it.
Yeah. He's only got 1 set of tyres for this final part of qualifying. Everybody else has 2, so that's why he's going out in this middle gap. But could we be looking at 2010 Brazil all over again, / 2022 Brazil and all over again?
On the other end of the scale of that is Verstappen, who, because he had to do an extra lap thanks to his earlier mistake, is one of the last to come in and change tyres.
Here's Verstappen's radio.
Downshifts are getting worse as well. Speedy.
Copy.
I swear I've never heard anyone complain about downshifts as much as Verstappen. Not just this year, like for the last 5-6 years, always complaining about downshifts.
It does seem quite sensitive to it.
Yeah.
It is a big thing. Any shift will affect the balance of the car pretty significantly, and most of the time F1 cars are very, very good at smoothing out that shift as much as possible, but he obviously has very high standards.
It's the kind of thing where you always hear Hamilton complain about tyres, and you always hear Verstappen complain about downshifts. Albon across the line, he improves, but only is 7th quickest at the moment, and he's just beaten by Lance Stroll. But an 8th place for Albon would be very strong, because 8th is basically best of the rest. Stroll only 7th quickest, so we'll see whether he gets a cool-down lap or not. Verstappen's still in the pits, 3.5 minutes to go. Hamilton, Alonso, Russell, Sainz, Leclerc, all on their outlaps. Verstappen's still in the pit lane right now.
Hulkenberg has started his first flying lap, but it's a warm-up lap. He's still bringing the tyres in as well.
Carlos Sainz out of the final corner. He is doing a warm-up lap 2 in the Ferrari. I'm pretty sure, anyway, he looked pretty tentative through the final corner. Now down into turn 1. And yeah, he's just chilling. Carlos Sainz waiting for the tyres to come in on this next run. Verstappen has now left the pits, so should be fine and on the same run plan as everybody else.
Well, he's been one of the anomalies that hasn't needed an extra lap to warm up, so he will be able to push on his first lap. Leclerc is pushing on, it seems like, so he's done a 26.8, which is a personal best in the first sector, missing a 10.5 or so of purple. Not too bad, but yeah, he's not hanging around. He wants to get this lap done before any chance of rain comes. Now heading towards turns 9 and 10. A very fast chicane. He's lost 2.5 tenths through sector 2, so it's not the best lap from him. Doesn't look like it will be an improvement.
2 minutes to go. Through comes Leclerc, goes past Lance Stroll, who keeps over to the left-hand side and out of the way. Verstappen is just starting a lap now, so he has got time to do a couple more if he needs it. Across the line comes Leclerc. Thank you, Chris. We've got 1.5 minutes to go in this final part of qualifying, the battle for pole position. Max Verstappen, who is the championship leader by 1 point over Sergio Perez, is on provisional pole position at the moment. His teammate Sergio Perez crashed out in the opening part of qualifying, so as a result it is just Verstappen, the only Red Bull, in this final part. But at the moment he's on pole, just 9 thousandths ahead of Lewis Hamilton. The top 4 are all separated by less than 1/10 of a second. Alongside me in commentary is the former Williams reserve driver Jack Aitken, and Hamilton is having a bit of a squabble out on circuit to try and find some clean air to do his final qualifying lap in. Meanwhile, Verstappen is improving. He's coming through the final sector here, and he's on a pretty strong run. Jack Aitken.
Well, he was fully committed into the turn 12 fast right-hander as he gets towards the end of the lap. Last 2 corners where he had a bit of trouble before, he's got no such trouble this time around, using all the track on the way out. This looks like a strong sector 3, and it is. It's a 16.7. He puts himself half a second clear of the field.
Big lap from Max Verstappen. It's going to be a real challenge for anyone to catch him now. Across the line comes Lance Stroll in the Aston Martin. He goes up into 4th place. Fernando Alonso, his teammate, now comes out of the final corner, cuts the timing beam. Can he find any time? He goes up into 2nd, but he's still 4 tenths away from Max Verstappen. Hamilton's on a lap now. George Russell is improving as well. The 2 Mercedes are going to be next through. Carlos Sainz takes the checkered flag, gets up into 3rd place for the time being. Now here comes Russell out of the final corner. Russell goes 2nd. Out qualifies Fernando Alonso. He's only 2 tenths away from Max Verstappen, and Hamilton goes 3rd. Verstappen will be on pole position for the Australian Grand Prix, but Russell and Hamilton will be right behind him in the Mercedes. A huge smile on the face of Toto Wolff, because I think that's a little better than maybe Mercedes were expecting.
Yeah, I think so. It was looking like a really good lap for Russell in particular, and to get within a couple of tenths after a little bit of a tricky free practice yesterday for them, that's strong. I mean, Verstappen, he's been favourite all weekend, so it's no surprise to see him at the top of the pile.
So Max Verstappen on pole position. Russell will be 2nd on the grid. Hamilton 3rd. 4th for Fernando Alonso. 5th for Carlos Sainz in the Ferrari. 6th for Lance Stroll. 7th for the other Ferrari of Charles Leclerc. Really tough day for the Italian squad. Brilliant qualifying from Alex Albon to qualify 8th in the Williams. 9th will be Gasly. 10th will be Hulkenberg. A standing ovation for Max Verstappen as he returns to the pit lane, and he will start on pole position for the Australian Grand Prix tomorrow morning, which gets underway in 23 hours here on 5 Live.
1.1 seconds faster.
Mercedes are going to be delighted with that. Here's Russell's radio.
Awesome job, mate. So that's P2.
Not too shabby. Nice work, nice move. I thought our car was 1 second off the pace.
Russell saying, I thought our car was a second off the pace. Well,
that's what he's had to get used to since he stepped into the Mercedes, isn't it? He's only seen the struggles of Mercedes, really, but they seem to be bouncing back quite nicely this weekend, and with more upgrades to come, it's only going to be an upwards curve for them, so this is very encouraging. But very impressive qualifying from Verstappen. I mean, as we mentioned, he has been the favourite, but no mistakes pretty much the whole session. Just that one wide moment at turn 13, and apart from that, he's been pretty faultless. So, credit where it's due.
And it was a big lap, that 16.7. When he put that in to go half a second clear of the rest of the field, you thought, no one's getting anywhere near that. And I would not, at that point, have bet on both Mercedes being within 0.3.
No, yeah, and a little bit surprised to see the Aston Martins. They seem to struggle more and more as the session went on. They started not too bad and then just didn't really kick on as others upped the pace. So, I mean, obviously not a bad result for Alonso to be on the second row and Stroll on the third row, but not quite as strong as we might have expected.
Rosanna, pole position for Verstappen, but Mercedes still there. A lot of pain for Ferrari. Alonso only fourth. Lots of stories.
Yeah, so many things to keep across during that qualifying session. And I tell you what, somebody else who was keeping across things, Sergio Perez. He was in the media pen as Max Verstappen set that incredible time, half a second clear of the field. Obviously, it tightened up a little bit, but you could see just a desperation in Checo's eyes. He doesn't think he's going to be able to overtake tomorrow. I think it's going to be a really difficult Sunday afternoon for the Mexican.
Right, we will bring you all the reaction on the Checker Flag podcast, which will be available to download. Cool, what do we reckon? By lunchtime, UK, Joe? You reckon by lunchtime you'll have done the Checker Flag podcast? Yeah, he reckons so. So about then we should be getting underway. You'll hear from the top three then, but that's all we've got time for here on Radio 5 Sports Extra. Thanks for joining us. This has been an IMG production for BBC Radio 5 Live. Verstappen on pole, Russell second, Hamilton third. You can hear from the top three in the Checker Flag podcast a little bit later on.